Started. Hello everybody, my name is Umebuani and I manage the PRCA Apprenticeships. Thank you all for attending this morning, and to our panellists, of course, with whom I'll be discussing the PR Apprenticeship programme. I hope that by the end of this hour and a half or so, we'll have answered most of your questions about the apprenticeship programme and helped to demonstrate its benefits. So for those that don't know, I'm essentially just going to run through who the PRCA are. So we are the world's largest professional PR body. We also deliver the PR Apprenticeship programme, which recruits and trains future communicators as part of its mission to improve the industry. So the apprenticeship is a full-time hands-on job where apprentices earn and learn, and they spend 1 day per week on their studies, theorising essentially all the practical PR work that they do in their day-to-day. So they attend training courses to build up their knowledge and essentially just prepare to be assessed on the different elements of PR throughout and at the end as well. So our apprentices get a real good opportunity through membership to build their professional network, and they obviously can apply what they learn in the training courses and from the people that they meet to apply to their day-to-day roles in real time. So the panellists that we have here today are on different ends of the apprenticeship spectrum. So we hope to give you a well-rounded overview of the apprenticeship experience from each perspective and have your questions answered accurately, hopefully, by people best related to each one. So I'll let them introduce themselves and we'll run through some of the questions that were sent through prior to today. It's a Q&A after all, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions, and you can do this through the chat box on the platform throughout, so that's just on the bottom, and we will do our best to answer them at the end. If you have any sort of support or technology questions, we'd appreciate if you email the team at training@prca.org.uk, just so we kind of keep it separated. Okay, so panellists, could you please introduce yourself and explain what your relationship is to the PR apprenticeship or apprenticeships in general? Kate?
Yes, so hi everybody. My name is Sullivan and I am the owner and MD at ADPR. We're a relatively small PR agency based in Somerset. We're a team of 10 and we work with a really wide variety of clients, from large global organisations through to SMEs, startups, local councils and professional services. So a really wide variety of clients. One of our core values as an agency is to really ensure that we can offer a culture of opportunity and meaningful careers within our local area. One of the reasons for this, I won't bore you too much with it, but one of the reasons being is that we're in a very rural area and traditionally recruitment can be quite a challenge for us. Understandably, a lot of young people want to go and work in the city. Perhaps that's going to change in light of the pandemic that we're all experiencing, but for us it's always been very important to show that actually you can have a fantastic career even if you are based in a rural location. You don't always have to be in the city. So for us, bringing on apprentices is one way that we've found is a really successful way for us and very beneficial to our business. Actually, we're really pleased this week because we've just won an award as Best Apprenticeship Employer. So we're really pleased about that because it's something that we feel so passionately about. And we're going to talk about this quite a lot as today goes on, but apprenticeships absolutely bring a lot to our business, and I certainly feel as a business owner that actually we do have a bit of responsibility, more now than ever before, to support people who are right at the very beginning of their careers. Thanks.
Amazing, thank you, Kate. And speaking of apprentices that you've had at ADPR, Kyra.
My name is Kyra Daly. I'm 19 years old and I'm an apprentice with Kate. She's my managing director at ADPR. So I started back in March, so about 5 months ago now, and I've thoroughly been enjoying the apprenticeship so far with obviously the PRCA, with all my projects. I have a mentor from the PRCA who helps me with all my assignments, and I've been really enjoying it so far with ADPR as well, with my responsibilities and all the PR work that I get to do. So hopefully I'll give a bit of transferable knowledge about what it's like to start an apprenticeship during lockdown and how it is for me so far, and the experience and invaluable bits you get from the PRCA apprenticeship.
Brilliante. Thank you, Kyra. And then Seymour, who are you? Oh, you're muted.
There you go, thanks.
Yeah, okay, no worries.
I wasn't able to unmute myself, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me this morning here, Stephanie, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Seymour Pierman, and I work for the Education and Skills Funding Agency, which is the part of Department for Education and the funding body for the apprenticeships in England. I've worked within apprenticeships for getting on for about 13 odd years now in various different guises, and be that consulting with a number of employers back in the really early days of apprenticeships when big employers didn't really know what to do with their programs and develop them, to working with the PRCA on developing the PR and Communications Standard, which I'll probably talk a little bit around later. And my current role is that I am working on a communications campaign, particularly around the recovery post-COVID-19 and how apprenticeships can potentially support that recovery work. So pleasure to be here.
Okay, thank you. And it's a pleasure to have you, Seymour, especially as you've contributed to essentially come back and get involved in this. But last but not least, Anaïs.
Hi, so I'm Anaïs. I am a former apprentice. I was an apprentice back in 2016 for a small boutique agency. After finishing my apprenticeship, we recruited a new apprentice, and then I was her manager. Since then, I have won the first ever PRCA PR Apprentice of the Year, which I have just now handed over. And I am the co-chair of the Apprentices and Skills Group, which is a account director at Connect PA. And yeah, thanks very much for having me here.
Okay, brilliante. Thank you to all our panelists. So as I said, they're on different ends of the spectrum, but I'm going to come straight through to you, Anaïs, because you just spoke. As a past PR apprentice yourself who progressed to then managing a PR apprentice within the same company, how would you say the apprenticeship has contributed to your PR career so far?
So massively. It gave me the opportunity to meet all different kinds of people from all different kinds of industries within the PR industry. It's really given me a platform to get involved with things and taught me so many valuable skills. Having come through the apprenticeship scheme and being the most junior person in a company, I have learned how to best respond to someone that is then in that position as their manager, to see all different kinds of elements of PR, whether I wasn't doing them in my certain role, just through the training courses. So I've been able to develop a really rounded experience and skill base just from this one scheme. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And that's good to know that obviously you found the training courses helpful, building up your knowledge of different elements of PR that maybe you might not have been doing in your day-to-day role. But essentially, speaking of career development, Kate, and progression, which is obviously what Anaïs is a success story for. Here is a third PR apprentice at ADPR, which is great. So where is your first PR apprentice now, and why did you want to hire another? And then another.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll have more as well. But we've had 3 apprentices, and our first one joined the company 9 years ago, Becky, and she is still with the company, and she has progressed brilliantly through the company, and she's now an account director. So for me as an employer, that's an absolute dream, because she's stayed with us, she's loyal, she knows our culture, she knows our clients so well, and very similarly, she's been able to train other apprentices as well, because she's got that experience. So yeah, we are delighted with Becky. The reason that we wanted to employ another, it's yes, from a business owner's perspective, it is a cost-effective solution, but the benefits are so much more than that, and that has never been our main motivation. I think apprentices, if you find the right one, they're so keen to get stuck in and learn. And I think one of the most invaluable things is that actually they're learning the foundations of the role and of the industry through the fantastic training that the PRCA offers. So for me, I'm not having to worry about that being delivered, but they're also getting experience of actually the reality of what it's like to work in the job. And sometimes that's something that we've found has been missing when we've taken on graduates or people who haven't done any kind of formal training. So when those two things come together, it just works brilliantly.
Okay, brilliant. Well, as always, and I always say this, I'm happy that obviously it's been a success so far and it continues to be. But in this period of uncertainty, as we've come to know it, it's meant that companies are unsure if and when they will be going back into essentially working in the office. So one of the main concerns about this, and what has come through to me, has been how managers and companies can help junior members of staff feel welcome, comfortable, and supported. So for someone who has successfully done this, for Kyra, how did you approach the onboarding process, and what would be your tips for companies looking to hire an apprentice remotely?
Yes, so we obviously weren't planning for Kyra to start as an apprentice and within 2 weeks be on complete lockdown. So, and I'll be honest with you, if somebody had said to me before this, you know, would you consider taking on an apprentice remotely? I probably would have said no. I don't know how we'd go about that, but sometimes we need to be forced into these things to realise that actually it's absolutely fine, and it's worked really, really well. I think top tips for us is to make sure that you are spending time getting to know that apprentice and really immersing them within the team. So for us, we made sure that we were having calls every morning so that we could come together as a team, but we were also doing social things, you know, the typical Zoom quizzes like everybody's been doing, but that gave Kyra a really good opportunity to get to know people outside of the work environment as well. I personally was checking in with Kyra a lot of the time as well, because I was very aware that when I was briefing other members in the team about the business and things that were happening, actually probably didn't really mean a whole lot to Kyra. So I was making a point of just touching base with her regularly, just to make sure that she was fully aware of everything, and also providing her with lots of feedback and reassurance about her own role as well. I suppose my top tip, if you're looking for somebody and going to be on board remotely, is perhaps we need to change the things that we're looking for when we're recruiting somebody. So traditionally, there might have been things that we thought, oh, we can work with that. Someone's a bit shy or a bit unsure, but we'll be in the office and we can nurture them in that way. I think now my learning would be that actually the things that you need to be looking for is that that person is quite confident, quite happy and able to work on their own, and to be a bit more of a self-starter, I suppose. So yeah, for us, that's really important, and that would be a top tip.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And I think that's one of the things that stood out essentially when the recruitment process was happening, that we found in Kyra, in that, you know, that really did come across. So you, Kyra, you're on the other end of this, and now what, 5 months into your PR apprentice role at ADPR, thinking about any concerns or fears you had when we were initially placed on lockdown. What are your thoughts on remote working now, and what elements of your experience so far would you suggest that other companies adopt?
So yeah, thank you, Steph. I indeed began my role as a PR apprentice just over 5 months ago now. So I initially started working in the office with my colleagues at ADPR, but I was only able to establish myself for 2 weeks before we moved over to working remotely. As I just started the role, which will always be a little nerve-wracking at sometimes, my initial worries were I wouldn't be able to find my feet or adapt to a very new career as easily as I would if I was in an office environment. So I also had a few concerns of feeling isolated away from the team, as I'm quite a sociable person by nature generally anyway. So, but these nerves, however, didn't last more than a few days after being placed into lockdown, as I was, and I still am, very thankful to how my colleagues, my management, obviously Kate, and my mentor from the PRCA supported my induction into my new role. And they helped me adapt to the fast-paced environment of public relations really well. So I was able to settle in pretty fast. Kate, obviously, as she said, she introduced daily virtual team meetings via Microsoft Teams to ensure we were internally communicating on a work basis consistently. And everybody was really transparent and supportive, which removed any initial worries that I had at the start. Although the situation for all of us is very out of the ordinary, and I didn't quite expect it going into a new role, as a team and as a new addition to ADPR myself, we navigated these uncertain times together. And so far, working at ADPR has genuinely been the best experience of my life, despite the challenges that a global pandemic presented. So overall, my thoughts from working from home now are very, very positive. I personally have had amazing experience so far in my role as a PR apprentice, and I learn an incredible amount every single day, like working on client accounts or my projects in my apprenticeship, and I now hold many of my own responsibilities as well. My apprenticeship projects so far also have had really great feedback from my mentor at the PRCA. So she always says she's very impressed with my progress in the apprenticeship so far. So I'm quite happy with how everything's going at the minute as well. The elements of my experience I would suggest to other companies to adopt are the high levels of trust, support and communication. I would say the key things that I received from ADPR that really helped me progress and achieve so far in my role. These attributes combined have made me achieve what I have so far and develop in my role from the comfort of my home. So for me, my experience has been really amazing, and I would say much of this stems from the leadership. So I think Kate has really put in everything she can in order to make sure I felt comfortable and welcome, and and it has, I think, definitely paid off. And as well as the quality, obviously, of the PRCA apprenticeship, and as the projects and my day-to-day work complement each other so well. So it enables my progression at a really fast pace, which I think is amazing. So yeah, I really couldn't recommend it enough.
Okay, amazing. I mean, so many praises for you there, Kate, and how it's obviously been done in terms of making Kyra feel comfortable. And I should add as well that Kyra did say that it was, you know, done very successfully, that she was made to feel very confident even when Kate wasn't here. So yeah, so thank you so much. From what I got from that is more so that, you know, the support and also the trust that's put into the apprentice builds up the responsibility that they get, and then obviously they can get their own trust in themselves, and be able to do more things of essentially higher up than they probably would have done aside from that. So I think one of the things that I did notice as well, or one of the things from our conversation, Kate, is that Kyra has been able to be exposed to more things because of lockdown, because of the remote working, and being able to sit in on meetings, am I correct, and hear how other elements of the company work as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually that's been one of the good things about lockdown, is that perhaps we wouldn't have taken Kyra to so many client meetings, you know, if we were physically getting in the car and going to visit clients. But actually she's been involved in so much, and I think that's been hugely beneficial. And I think one of the things actually about being quite a small business is that we are able to provide a really good foundation for all of our apprentices, because you know, Kyra certainly would never, even if we were in the office, have been sitting around making cups of tea all day. You know, she's fully immersed in our business, and I guess that's the beauty of being a slightly smaller agency, is that we are able to provide that experience to our apprentices.
Amazing. She can get stuck in. So if we're discussing sort of the benefits of apprenticeships to young people's careers and how we can overcome obstacles like remote onboarding, it's only right that we also discuss the benefits to companies. So to start, I'll say that the studies show that an apprentice improves productivity by £214 a week. They bring fresh ideas, encourage a more positive workplace overall, and we also can't ignore that in this period, school leavers and future communicators are entering an extremely difficult jobs market. So in response to this, the government has introduced a cash incentive. Companies that hire a new apprentice aged 16 to 24 receive £2,000. And for those apprentices aged 25 and above, the employer receives £1,500. This is additional to the £1,000 incentive that was already available for taking on an apprentice aged 16 to 18, which is all very exciting. And we hope these incentives will be a springboard for companies considering apprenticeships. But Seymour, this is a purely practical question. How do companies go about claiming these funds?
I always love a practical question and a very important one. Of course, you need to understand the key sort of dates involved and also the process involved, because it will be slightly different to grants that have been offered by the for the apprenticeship program previously. If I can just run through some key dates for everybody so everybody's clear on that. The incentive, as Stephanie has just outlined, is launched from the 1st of August. So any new employee who starts with that organisation from that date up to the 31st of January 2021 would be eligible. The next key date to have in mind is that the 1st of September will be when the first claims can be made from, okay? So you can backdate it to the 1st of August, but the claims themselves can't go in until after the 1st of, or from the 1st of September onwards, potentially. The first payments, and the payment will be split, within the first payment goes out after 90 days, or the process will start after 90 days. So generally, the first payment will be landing into bank accounts in January time. And then the other 50% is after 365 days of being on program as well. The slight difference in terms of the process is that all employers will need to go on to the apprenticeship service. And for those listeners who don't know what the apprenticeship service is, if you're a levy paying employer, you will know what that is, because it's where you manage your apprenticeship account ultimately, and you can select for a training provider, you can select an endpoint assessment organisation, you can manage your funds through that account. But going forward, all employers, irrespective of being a levy payer or a non-levy payer, will need to be registered on that system. And that's how the payment will be made. So it'll be going directly from government to the employer, and it wouldn't necessarily be going through the training provider as traditionally has been done. Details of how to get onto the apprenticeship service, there are things on YouTube currently. There's also some stuff on gov.uk. I can happily share that with you, Stephanie, and everybody can have sight of that. But as part of the comms campaign we're working on at the moment, we are refreshing some of the content around what that will look like, because some of the journey will be slightly different for non-levy employers who possibly never used this service before, to ones who have already and are quite well versed with the system ultimately. So that's generally how the payment will be made in terms of the practicalities of how it is. They have to go onto the apprenticeship service. You will need to be obviously agreeing to the terms and conditions. There'll be a T's and C's employer agreement on there that needs to be signed. There needs to be an apprenticeship agreement in place, but again, that's a standard process with any apprenticeship anyway. And as I said, once you're registered on there, we're good to go.
Okay, brilliant. A question that has come up from someone is whether or not notes will be sent around after with all of the key points. And yes, they will be. Don't worry about that. So essentially things like the link that Seymour is talking about on the platform and how you can get onto the system will be shared with you, as well as all of the points from each of our panelists today. So Seymour, again, for someone who's been involved in, as we've said previously, the development of the PR and Communications Apprenticeship Standard, which we currently deliver for anyone who doesn't know, and for someone who's worked in and around apprenticeships for over 10 years or so, how would you say the apprenticeships world has evolved, and where do you see it going?
It's changed massively from when I first started within the ESFA, or the ESFA as it was at that time back in 2007, and I've always worked in the area of apprenticeships. The breadth of opportunity that's now available compared to then is just huge. I mean, for the example of the public relations and communications level 4, we class it as a higher level apprenticeship. It wasn't even available in that sector at all. So, and that's not just alone in that sector. It's an awful lot in the creative sectors. There was a dearth of opportunity around the apprenticeship program, and it tended to focus very much in the areas where you would people possibly still think, you know, construction, carpentry, you know, manufacturing, those kind of industries that still very much rely on apprenticeships. But now it's opened up in terms of that breadth of opportunity, and not just in the disciplines, but at the levels. So, you know, this opportunity here for the PR and comms is a level 4. As I said, it's a higher level apprenticeship. Again, they were just not available. It tended to be more a level 2, level 3, and that just generally is kind of a GCSE standard or an A-level potential standard as well. So when I was working very much with employers back in 2010, 2011, and people like the BBC, Channel 4, ITV, they just said, Seymour, there's not really a huge amount we really want to do this, because we really want to open up our recruitment processes to get more involved with the apprenticeship program. We see real benefits to people coming in on the job. There just wasn't necessarily the programs there to support that ambition. So now we're in a hugely different space in terms of that opportunity. So it's a brilliant time, and I think a lot of that has really helped to sort of break down some of those prejudices potentially around how the apprenticeship program will be looked at, and, you know, it's a good thing, but maybe not necessarily for my son or daughter, but absolutely people now just, it's a good opportunity, as you can well see from what Kyra and Anaïs have been saying. Absolutely.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's all very positive, essentially, from when you first started off in apprenticeships to where it is now and where it is going, in that there are so many, for someone who has always been in the creative field myself, I'm always pushing for the fact that, you know, there are more opportunities for people to train up, as well as get experience in sectors that they enjoy, not so much, you know, are pushed into for the sake of it. So
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people that work in PR can say that they enjoy it, and, you know, it's not boring, that's for sure. There are always things thrown at you that you can that you have to respond to possibly quite quickly. And all of our apprentices essentially come out of the program and say that, you know, from their work experience, day-to-day role, and, you know, with the training courses, that they essentially have to work quite quickly to respond to things in their companies, but also in their day-to-day life. But coming back to you, Anaïs, and obviously from what Seymour has said and how the apprenticeship world is evolving and where it is going, why do you think it's an important time to launch the Apprenticeships and Skills Group, which you're co-chair of?
So the group acts as a kind of forum for member organisations that are either running their own apprenticeships or are interested in apprenticeships or are supporting clients that have apprentices and skills spaces to get involved, join in the conversation, and think about ways to improve that kind of thing. And it's just an open channel of communication between all different people within the space. Obviously now more than ever, there's a lot of economic uncertainty. So putting the group has really put apprenticeships on the map, especially now. And it's a really important way to highlight how important these kinds of schemes are to our economic current climate. We always want to encourage apprenticeship employers and apprentices themselves to just really get involved and to boost the industries that they're in. And it's a place, where people can just freely communicate these kinds of things. And it's important for people to know that there is, you know, so much positivity around things, even when it might not seem that there is much positivity going on at the moment.
Okay, absolutely, and hopefully, you know, when you do launch it, that is the case, that we can sort of get the conversation going, or keep the conversation flowing between all of the different sort of aspects of apprenticeships as well. So we're going to open up the floor for questions, but we have actually had a few come through whilst Seymour and Anaïs were speaking. But if you haven't sort of done so already, please submit your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen and let us know who you're directing it to if you can. In the meantime, I will answer some questions as well that have been submitted prior to today. So one of the questions was, how does the PRCA apprenticeship tie in with the government's apprenticeship levy? And can the levy pot be used to recruit those apprentices? My answer to that is our apprenticeship program is fully payable via the apprenticeship levy through your company's digital account, which Seymour mentioned earlier. These funds can be used to train up new apprentices as well as upskill existing interns or other employees that are working in different teams. But they can't be used towards the recruitment and salary. A question that has come through from Jessica is, are these incentives, I think this question would probably be for Seymour, for all companies, including public sector bodies?
Yeah, they are.
Yes.
At the moment, there's no differentiation being looked at. It might well be looked at as we go towards the end of the program, because obviously the window of opportunity is 6 months, so it's not a big window, but we'll be monitoring it really, really closely to see how it lands. And we also need to look at the wider, issues that might be coming up within different sectors and seeing if there's extra support that might be needed somewhere rather than others. But at the moment, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And Nicola's asking, sorry if Seymour has mentioned this already, but just to clarify, is this particular apprenticeship a level 3 A-level equivalent or level 4? I can answer that as well, to be fair. It is a level 4, so that's a higher apprenticeship and the equivalent to a foundation degree, which is the first year of university. So it's only the level 4 apprenticeship that is available in PR and communications at the moment. Next question, what is your sense of mapping apprenticeship qualifications to the apprenticeship standards? What are the benefits and risks? So the standard itself that we offer, we only offer it with the level 4 diploma attached to it, which is a nationally recognised qualification. And essentially with that, it has mandatory and optional units sort of merged into one, which the idea is that it should be able to merge around the company that is taking on the apprentice, and all of the different units that the apprentice completes, they will then be able to develop the knowledge, skills and behaviours that are listed in the standard, which is then when the apprentices get assessed in an endpoint assessment in their final 3 months. And because they would have completed a level 4 diploma before they go through and complete that assessment anyway, most of our apprentices, all of them even, are all very prepped to then essentially demonstrate higher level knowledge, skills and behaviours that meet all of the criteria on the standard. So for me, I would say the benefits for that are that it is the same level, and that we have sort of training courses that match with all of the units on the diploma. So when the apprentice has completed the diploma, they can then be quite confident that they have a qualification already, and essentially they're just getting the standard as an additional. Hopefully that answers your question. Another is, apologies, I need to leave them. Okay. Another question from Sharon. Can the apprentices study one area of communications, i.e. internal comms, or do they have to cover a wide range of disciplines? They do have to cover a wide range of disciplines, because the idea is that they learn all of the aspects of PR, or as many as possible, including internal communications. That's one of the optional units, if that was sort of how their role was what their role was focused on, but they will have to cover external as well. They would have to cover, they would have to do presentations, they would have to contribute to campaigns, and essentially all of the things that a PR and communications assistant would do. And the idea is that if for whatever reason they didn't want to stay in your company, or you didn't want to keep them on, they do have sort of a broad range of understanding of PR and experience, which I think is kind of what Anaïs was saying earlier, in terms of, you know, when you were looking for a role, if I remember correctly, after leaving the company that you completed your apprenticeship at, employers who were hiring did notice that, you know, there was a massive breadth of knowledge and training that you had completed.
Yeah, they were so impressed by
Hello?
that. Oh, hello.
Yes, sorry, you just cut off there. So you said they were so impressed, and then it went.
Yes, so impressed by the variety of training things that I had done. Even if I hadn't, that wasn't my particular expertise within the company, the fact that I had a kind of base knowledge about all these different topics was really something that stood out when I was applying for other roles, especially from, you know, graduates that were coming, because it's a very competitive.
It's a very competitive industry, Anaïs?
The job market is competitive.
Okay, the job market. Sorry,
yeah.
It cut off again. So
yes,
I was just trying to finish your sentence, which I'm sorry for doing.
No, maybe I should stop. But my having a big list of things that you've done and covered was, everyone loved it. So amazing. It really is something special.
Brilliant. Thank you. So the question from Claire is, hi, our consultancy is based in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Does the programme apply here too? I think you have a different funding system. I think Seymour might know more about this.
Yes, at the moment, anything that goes through the apprenticeship levy or anything through the apprenticeship service is only for employers that are based in England. So the funding only works through England, because it's all devolved responsibilities when it comes to skills and employment and so forth like that. But there are similar schemes working in the devolved nations, so in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland as well. I would be happily to send information through about how to contact those organisations, and then your respective organisations, and find out how it's funded.
Okay, thank you very much. What are the key considerations of a large PR agency that a large PR agency should consider when they currently don't have any PR apprentices but want to take on several at once? Key considerations would be that you should have sort of the support in place to be able to take on those apprentices and support them the whole way through. I would say if you have a line manager or an internal mentor in mind for all of those apprentices, rethink that and possibly try, if possible, because you are a large PR agency, to have essentially a couple of line managers, so one per apprentice, just so they know who to go to, and you know, in terms of the support that the person is providing internally, you want them to be able to have the time to support the apprentice. So whoever it is that is giving them the work on a day-to-day basis will probably be the best person to be their line manager, and essentially just have in mind that those line managers, or whoever it is that you choose or appoint, would need to attend a progress review every 2 months. So we have taken on apprentices in groups. So I think the largest cohort that we've done so far is 4 at once. And these were, if I'm honest, in-house companies. But I think the same thing applies essentially. So all I would do is induct them at the same time. I do try and assign the same mentor as well, just so that, you know, they have some sort of consistency in from our side in terms of the apprenticeship, but all of their journeys will be different. I think that might answer your question, hopefully. Is there a limit of apprentices you can have in one company? That kind of goes with the other question, and it is no, there is no limit. How is the diploma delivered? So the diploma is delivered through, it's a very workplace-based apprenticeship. So all of the work that the apprentice is submitting in their assessments would be based on evidence from their day-to-day role. So if they are, for example, completing a presentations unit or a campaigns unit, then they would do the training courses from the PRCA, which tend to be webinars, to build up their knowledge. But at the same time, the mentor would have a discussion with the apprentice's line manager to try and make sure that there is, you know, sort of synergy between the two. So whatever they're doing in their day-to-day role, they would then complete it in their assessment, meet the criteria, tick that off and move on. So the more units that the apprentice completes, the higher that their progress grows. And when they've reached 100% on their diploma, then they are essentially marked as ready to go through Gateway, something called Gateway, to complete their endpoint assessment for the standard. So it's essentially a mix between the day-to-day role and the experience that they gain from the company that they work for. The assessments that they complete, which can be through projects, which are very writing based, great experience for when they do the final project in their endpoint assessment. It could be compiling witness testimonies. If they, for example, put together an event and they said that this is how they contributed to the success of the event, and then they might get a manager to vouch for that contribution. So that would be a witness testimony or a professional discussion. It just varies. So the idea of the apprenticeship is that it's flexible. It's flexible, and it should be able to sort of work around your company as well.
Can I chip in there, Steph?
Yes, please.
Having experienced that firsthand as well, I think one of the really amazing things about the apprenticeship program is at the start, Kyra, myself and Kyra's mentor all sat down and we looked at all of the different modules, and we worked out between us the ones that Kyra perhaps had an interest in learning or felt that she really wanted to explore more. And we also looked at ones that we felt would be really beneficial for her to do within her role at ADPR. So it really is a team effort. And I think sometimes when you start looking into these programs as an employer, you start thinking, gosh, this all looks really quite complex. Mm-hmm. And it really isn't. And I have to say the PRCA make the process very, very easy, even from just saying, actually, I'm thinking about taking an apprentice on. They filter the candidates, they take out so much of the struggle of the whole recruitment process, and then guide you through the whole time. So actually, yes, we are very involved with Kyra's progression and development, but equally an awful lot of it is being done just with Kyra and her mentors. So it all comes together really, really nicely. So we're really benefiting the apprentice and their personal development, but also benefiting us as an agency as well. So it's not a painful process at all, and the PRCA do everything possible to make it really easy and seamless.
Amazing. Thank you, Kate. A question from Anne, and it's a question for Seymour. Are you expecting any reforms to the apprenticeship levy, such as changes in the levy transfer to support smaller businesses later in the year?
Very good question, and one that comes up quite a lot from employers. In answer to that, not currently would be the answer, although it is always something that the minister is continually looking at and is always being reviewed, and I think it'll be something that will continue as we kind of go into probably what's going to be quite a tricky few months for the economy going forward. So yes, not currently, but it's always under review.
Okay. Thank you, Seymour. And what is the minimum and maximum time frame that an apprentice can be taken on board by a firm? So the minimum amount or time, that the apprentice can be on the program is 12 months. And that's essentially the time that they have to spend training. So they have to spend 12 months training and then go on to do their endpoint assessment. The PR Standards endpoint assessment for the apprenticeship is 3 months. That's how long the endpoint assessment takes, approximately. But the difference with the way that the PRCA offer the program is that, as I mentioned before, there is the diploma attached to it. And that takes 15 months. So for us, the minimum that the apprentice should be on program is 18, and that includes the 15 months diploma and then the 3 months endpoint assessment at the end. Does the PRCA support with an assessment centre for multiple apprentices, or will we have to run this ourselves? So we have an endpoint assessment organisation already, and there is just the one from what I know anyway, that is offering the endpoint assessment. And what we've been doing is that the apprentices, especially the ones based in London, can come through to our offices and use our rooms. That's an agreement that we have with the endpoint assessment organisation. In this period, though, there have been a lot of assessments obviously going forward anyway, and they have been done remotely, and that's not been an issue. So essentially, in the event you need an assessment centre, we are there, but you essentially don't need one. You can use your offices, and that is an option that you can choose. And that is only at the end. So all of the assessments that go on in the first 15 months of the programme are done remotely, and all are put onto something called an e-portfolio. It's called OneFile, and can be accessed by the manager, by the apprentice, by any observers that you choose within your company, and obviously by the mentor as well. Should we avoid apprentices under 18 years old, as there's likely to be a lot of alcohol around at social events? We like to drink. Okay. If you should avoid apprentices under 18 years old, I wouldn't say that, no. But if you feel as though it would be quite difficult for you to involve the apprentice in all of the activities that other colleagues would be doing, then maybe start from 18. I'll be honest and say that most of our apprentices are over 18 and above anyway. The average age at the moment is 20. So technically, you know, most of the people that you have the possibility of hiring on the apprenticeship will be over 18. But good question. Thinking about how you're obviously going to take the apprentice in and make them feel comfortable. Right. Have any apprentices continued with this diploma into university and entered at level 5? Or are there further programs that reach level 6 via the apprenticeship route that they can take? As I know it's a competitive market and some employers do tend to only recruit graduates. Good question. I would say that from obviously being in touch with majority of our apprentices, if not all of them, afterwards to sort of check in on how they're doing, and how they've sort of progressed following on from the program. Majority of them have gone on just to carry on in the workplace and sort of progress in their career. And they haven't felt the need to carry on in training, aside from just general CPD, like training courses at the PRCA and etc. We have had one apprentice that I remember who went on to do a degree, but that's something that she had planned prior anyway. As I said, the only level that is available at the moment for the PR apprenticeship is the level 4. So if any apprentice chose to do another program or another degree, whether in university or via the apprenticeship, it would have to be in something different to PR, but there are some related ones as well at high level.
Can I just chip in there as well? One of the changes that came about when I sort of was talking earlier about how things have changed an awful lot, one of the real issues was often about the progression through to university, because apprenticeships themselves didn't always collect tariffs, and tariffs are what you build up to go to you when you do your UCAS application form and so forth like that. But with the standard program that's come in, because obviously the old program changed 3 years ago to become the PR and Communication Standard, now all standards collect tariffs. So that means that they can use that to go forward to progress into if they then want to go on to university at a later date, into whichever discipline they choose to do. It might not necessarily be specifically PR, it might be something completely different, but they will still have collected those tariffs.
Brilliant, thank you, Seymour. And this question is for Kate, or the next two questions actually are for Kate. How many of your apprentices have stayed on with you afterwards, and how long do they typically stay for?
Yep, so all of them so far have stayed on with us. Like I said earlier, Becky's been with us now for 9 years. And then we had Zach as well, who was with us for 4 years. And he did actually decide that he wanted to do a degree as well, but he actually stayed on with us part-time as an account executive whilst he was doing his degree, and he got promoted within that time to senior account exec. And he left actually just before lockdown as well. He actually left to go and join another agency in Bristol. So but he was with us for 4 years. Yeah, so which is really good.
Amazing, thank you. And the other question as well is, how many senior people do you have in your company compared to the juniors and apprentices?
Yeah, so there's 3, I suppose, in the management team. And then I would say that then we've got an account director, account manager. We'll typically have a couple of account executives and 1 apprentice at the moment, who's Kyra. I think we typically, we've got quite a flat structure anyway, because we are quite small, but it balances out really well for us, works for us.
Amazing, thank you. And if anyone has any more questions, obviously feel free to drop them in. But I'd just like to get a last thought from each of the panelists whilst you're thinking of more questions, which I'm sure you have. Kyra, so how do you see yourself progressing through the apprenticeship and growing in the industry?
So I really see myself progressing well throughout the apprenticeship. Although I'm only a few months into the qualification, I've had some really exceptional feedback from my mentor at the PRCA so far, and I've been really lucky enough to experience so many great opportunities and responsibilities within my role as a PR apprentice at ADPR, which I can attribute to my learning in the apprenticeship in all of the projects. So I think the apprenticeship qualification is an amazing way to get your foot into the door for a career in PR. And due to the incredible quality of learning that I'm really lucky enough to experience at the PRCA, such as the informative webinars and my mentor to direct me through all of my projects, and obviously the hands-on experience I get in my day-to-day role, my apprenticeship has definitely exceeded my expectations completely. And I hope to keep developing and growing in the public relations industry with ADPR for years to come, hopefully.
Oh, that's lovely.
Brilliant.
Thank you. So Kate, even though you have given a great top tip for companies looking to hire an apprentice, but do you have another as a 3-time apprentice employer?
I think my advice would be, if you're sitting on the fence with it, take a leap of faith, which you have to do when you're recruiting anybody, somebody anyway. And I think if you take a leap of faith, work with the PRCA to bring somebody into your company, they will deliver such a lot for your business. What I would also say as well, though, is there is a lot of trust involved, and if we are remaining in this virtual world, then I think when you are going through the interview process, it's still really important to kind of listen to your gut instinct. If something doesn't feel right, there's probably a reason, and you will know when the right fit for your company comes along. And also, if it doesn't work out, sometimes it might not work out, but generally take a leap of faith, and I'm very confident that you won't regret it.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Kate. And then speaking of tips, what tips, Anaïs, would you give to new apprentices looking to get into the industry?
My tips would be to get out there, get involved, join the conversations. There's so much out there. It's just about finding it and using it. I actually found out about the PRCA apprenticeship scheme because I was looking on Twitter and I came across a hashtag which was PR Apprentices, and then through there did my research, found out about all these different companies that were offering it, and then obviously about the PRCA. You want to build your network. That is my biggest. Meet with apprentices, try and find them if you can, in an IR, or someone that you can speak to in another agency, and also come to our PR Apprentices and Skills, well, remotely join our group events. I should probably add that we are actually working on an event after the summer on the role apprenticeships can play in supporting the UK's economic recovery. And we've got a couple of very interesting speakers, and we're looking to invite key businesses as well as policymakers to have a panel discussion and to just throw around the conversation. It's open to everyone, so yeah, it'd be great to see some people join that too.
Amazing, thank you very much. I'll definitely be there. And Seymour, is there anything else that you feel companies should know when hiring an apprentice?
Well, just at the moment, I mean, it's been a very tricky year for everybody involved, obviously, given the situation that we found ourselves in. And it's potentially going to get even trickier, particularly for younger people and the younger generation in terms of the jobs market. So this is why these incentives are here and they're being rolled out. The window of opportunity for those incentives, as I said, is pretty small at the moment. And the reason for that was it's pretty short, because government are spending an awful lot of money currently to trying to support the economy going forward. What happens next year, none of us are aware of in terms of the government priorities for fund and what the funding will be looking like. So my feeling is, if you are in a position to recruit now and you can give an opportunity to a young person and you can get an incentive, do it, would be my takeaway.
Yeah, I remember you saying strike while the iron's hot.
Strike while the iron's hot, because we don't know what's going to happen in January in terms of any future funding or anything like that.
Yeah, brilliant. So great retention. What is the BAME representation in a sector which traditionally does not attract BAME community? So I'll be honest and say that in the apprentices, or from the apprentices that have come through from start to finish and obviously have completed, it's not as diverse as we would like it to be, but we've started taking over the last couple of years of records of the applicants that come through, and essentially just trying to understand where the drop-off comes in. So that's still something that I'm working on, but to try and also encourage more people from diverse backgrounds to even consider PR. I go to a lot of schools. I go and I talk in careers events to essentially promote PR as an industry, answer any questions that people might have, and I'm going into areas that possibly might not have been visited prior to me being there, or if they were visited, maybe people that were working in more quote unquote traditional sectors or traditional industries, and just giving people a voice to be able to explore something different and I've said this earlier, to maybe what their parents are pushing them to, and I speak for myself there. Yeah, just trying to strike them whilst they're still young, and at least opening up their minds to the possibility of even considering PR, or considering a creative industry to go into. So yeah, starting young, but also making sure that we have an understanding of how we can maybe stop the drop-offs from as early as possible. So yeah, that's my answer to that question. Thank you very much. So we've, answered all of the questions that have come through. Thank you so much, panelists, and thanks to everyone who's attended today and the questions that you've submitted. In case you didn't know, we are currently offering a 20% off our recruitment fee. Speaking of recruitment or recruiting apprentices, we manage the whole process from shortlisting to ensuring eligibility to scheduling interviews and supporting your decision for the right candidate. And obviously we've worked with ADPR, Kate at ADPR before. So if you would like to speak about this or anything else, please feel free to drop me a line.